about Turkey being a member of NATO. So I think this whole discussion about corruption, intelligence concerns is a kind of a derail, because what is important about NATO isn't it's not those kind of policies. It's about defending the basic rights of democracy and liberal values, and the integrity of the member countries. If there are concerns about intelligence, I mean, it's not like if you're a member of NATO, all automatically all the member states have access to all intelligence. Absolutely not. It doesn't work like that. It's on the contrary. There's a lot of things that are not communicated to between NATO members. So yeah, and that's my point on this. And then on lunchtimes, a little remark on the T-14. I don't know if you have seen the T-14 Armata video that the Russians uh, leaked on purpose, but it's absolutely ridiculous. It confirms all of the suspicions that has been taken up. Basically, there are two videos. One of them where the tank is driving on some minor off-road terrain, screaming its engine, driving maybe 35 to 40 kilometers an hour, with the stabilizer of the barrel not working at all, and it's not even that bumpy. So that tank is yeah, I'm not concerned about that tank anytime soon. Thank you.
Mhm. Hey, and I know there was something that you mentioned, Patriot, about a lot of the tanks that Russia is donating to the Ukrainian army. One of the things about it is that some of this equipment that they're now starting to get is quite old. And so introducing the Leopards into the pack will actually, they can pull some of the newer slash older tanks that they've been using and take these Leopards and move them forward, thus increasing their ability to uh, go into these moves with a little faster precision, faster and with more precision. So although Russia is donating a lot, some of this stuff is aged, and it'll be good in like third and fourth echelons, but to say it would be good in their first echelon, I don't think it mechanically and the ability for them to fire as well and as fast as some of the others. I think that's just it's asking a lot from the Ukrainians to do that. And so giving them new equipment to where they can be advanced beyond what the Russians are doing, that's where we want to be. We want to be more advanced, not going backwards.
Yeah. I think maybe I came across a little bit wrong because I heard a couple people make comments about what I said. I wasn't suggesting that we hold them back. I was just suggesting that they continue to use what's currently in service until the logistics and everything is in place to fully implement the Leopards as a weapon system. Because I know a lot of people don't have background on it, but just putting a piece of equipment into service without having all the support in place for that piece of equipment is setting up for disaster. I was just suggesting that they use what they currently have and they have the logistics in place until they have everything set for the Leopards.
Well,
As an American, I would love to send. I wish if it was up to me, I would love to send them everything we possibly can, even our more modern Abrams.
but the only thing about it is that Germany is right there. It's not like they would have to go across the pond to resupply as we would the M1s, which there are a lot of stocks of M1 parts in Europe because they've been there so long. But with the Leopards, your supply line isn't that far. And if they've been working with them in the German army, even if they're older, they would know exactly what to send them. That's the thing about having fielded something and it's been around for a minute, is that they know what parts would go first. So they would actually take that supply line, shoot forward the things that they know would go down first, especially in the rounds of combat that they've been seeing. They know what will go down. That way, they have those things in the frontline maintenance units ready to go. The Ukrainians have been very, very good in moving this line forward, and they're not moving without supplies, food, bullets, and all of the things it takes to exact this war. So, being afraid of the supply line, I would not say that's something that you would have to worry about. Plus, either from the Germans supplying them or the other countries that have gotten them already, they all know what parts go bad, and they would make sure that they had those things ready and on hand. And if it was something weird, major, hey, it's not going to affect the whole fleet. It would just maybe that one. That's an outside chance. You're always going to have that one that wants to be a hangar whore, but they will go. They will know what to send if it breaks down. So that's the one thing about this logistics that won't be a factor.
Yeah, I agree with just about everything you just said, and I just wanted to respond to Leonard real quick. And while I 100% agree with you, I'm a very non-political person just because of how polarized things have become in the United States. It bothers me a lot. I'm not even going to get into that, but I do agree that there's a lot of polarized hyperbole about the corruption, and it's been used for political purposes. But the facts are, the Ukrainian chief of security service and the prosecutor general, including as of July, nearly 700 cases of high treason have been opened by Zelensky's, I guess, government right now, and that's the corruption that I'm speaking to. They're weeding. Yes, this is a diminishing thing in Ukraine because they are actively seeking to get rid of it as right now after the war began. But up until that point that the war began, it was a lot. There was a lot of almost cancerous corruption taking place in the government. Even when I would travel to Ukraine, I would meet people that would, and I'm not going to get into what was said to me, but people have said things that kind of make your ears ring a little bit, and those are the things that a lot of the other countries were hoping was gonna change over time. And I think that this has been such a hot issue for Ukraine to not just with the war, but with the government and the parliament and everything else to try to take care of. It is being taken care of, but it's not a trope, man. That there has been a lot of corruption that's had to be weeded out.
But they have a functioning government, just like as it would be in peacetime. They have a functioning government. They're holding court, and they are, like you said, they have people already up on charges. So that fear is not where it should not be where we're focused at. That fear is something that they're taking care of. They got a war right now going on, but they are, and Zelensky is doing he's doing his cabinet, their government. They are doing the things necessary to reduce the corruption, rid the corruption, because if they are looking to be accepted into the EU, they must rid themselves of these things. And what better time for people to show who they are is in war. And if they're showing who they are in war, it's a lot easier to pick them up and throw them out with the garbage, because necessity is the mother of invention. And in this case, people that are nefarious, they're showing their colors and they're going to be moved out. And I think that's a good thing. I hate that it's being done in wartime, but hey, it is what it is. So we can't keep focusing on the past in this case. They are doing what they need to do, and they will continue to do it because the world is watching. They know they know the way it was. People, they know the way it was, and they are looking for better out of them. And I think this war is going to do that in spades for them.
Daryl, my name was mentioned. Might I respond with your leave, sir?
Aye, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, sure. somewhat of a legitimate point in terms of recent ridding of corruption within certain sectors of Zelensky's government. But it should be noted that what you're referring to happened within just the last 7-8 months. And it should also be referenced on that very issue that, and this is something that is reading between the lines. So this is not something that is delivered on the basis of concrete evidence, but there has been strong suggestion that the surveillance, if you will, that's the wrong word, the monitoring, the success in perusing the current or the recent Ukrainian administration has been dramatically enhanced by, shall we say, surveillance expertise, electronics expertise, techniques that have been made available by certain other highly competent intelligence agencies, shall we say, on the planet. And that has allowed the interception and the monitoring of specific correspondence between, guess what, certain sectors within the Ukrainian administration and Moscow. And I mean, you can raise the issue and say, well, they've cleaned out 7,000 bad apples out of the barrel. Well, if you look into the actual size of the barrel, you'll find that most of those apples had a direct line to the Kremlin. So in effect, what they're doing is weeding out the carryover bad apples that were left over from not just Putinite era and all of the notorious Russian oligarchs that have had their fingers in the pie, from Firtash, Dmitry Firtash, Oleg Deripaska. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's a long and distinguished list, as some would say. But regardless, the point is they have been rooting it out vigorously, and you're right, they've dismissed a lot of personnel, and praise to them for doing that. That's just a further indication that they're getting their house in order. They're cleaning the bad apples out of the barrel. And let's be clear, there were plenty of bad apples in that barrel left over from Putinite era and even Soviet times before, and that whole ethos. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that sentiment, and I think that the current situation that's taking place with them continuing to clean house is only going to set them up for a much better future as to how the government's going to function after this war is won by Ukraine. But back to Daryl, just real quick before I jump back down and let these others get back in. And what I was referring to as far as the corruption was before February 24th and the effect that it took place on international relations and with the NATO consideration before February 24th. I agree with you. What has taken place since then and with the current administration in Ukraine, they've done an excellent job on moving forward on cleaning up the government and preparing their government to operate as a fully implemented democracy. And I'm going to go ahead and jump down.
All right. Thanks, Patriot. Thanks, Leonard. Let's go. Let's see. I got Raver, Tackums, Chris, and then you, Jens.
Hey, good evening, Daryl. I want to push back on the leopard thing just a little bit. So there's actually not that many leopards available that are already modernized. A lot of what's going to be available is stuff that's been sitting in a tank park somewhere, like the Spanish. So it's got to be modernized. It's got to be rebuilt and made serviceable. Say you do that over the winter. You've also got to train every level.
Germany already has them rebuilt and ready to go.
So you have to also rebuild every level of the supply and maintenance system, from the Army down to the Corps, down to the brigade, down to the battalion. All those people have to be trained. You have to retrain all those crews to fight a leopard. It's got a different fighting style than a T-Series. It can do things the T-Series can't. And so you're pulling 1, 2, 3 brigades of experienced troops off the line to retrain them. So that's a loss of combat power. It's a lot more. It's not a turnkey operation. It's something that Ukraine needs to do post-war because their logistics are just whack right now. They've got something like 12 different models of tanks running something like 6 or 7 different types of engines, and their only saving grace is they can all fire the 3BM-42, Soviet era, the Sabo and the heat rounds. You start introducing Western tanks, you've added another platform with another drivetrain, another maintenance bottleneck, and a whole new ammunition supply. It's going to be it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's not something you can just flip the switch and go, here are some Leopards, or here are some Abrams. It's going to be a process to build up that capability, and it's going to be an expensive process. The tanks are $4 to $5 million a piece. You give Ukraine 200 of them. Now you're looking at $1 billion just in the armor, not including the crew costs and then building up all of the support infrastructure. So I'm just pushing back on that a little bit. I think Ukraine probably has enough armor to get through this war. The Russian army is falling apart, and it's better to use what they have now and regain the land now than have to pull, experienced troops out of the line and lose that combat power and potentially stall out.
Raven, having worked on that remote side, supply line side, I can tell you, if they are sending them, they know what they're going to need. I mean, that's the troops on the front line. You want to talk about, taking good men. They need to cycle them through anyway, because and you're not talking about soldiers that don't know anything about tanks. Yes, it's a different tank. It's a new tank. It'll have different things about it that they have not seen. But a tank, the ability to fight that tank is still operating a tank. What they're going to change is the speed of that tank moving, which means that their execution will be a little bit different. They'll learn some things, how they can fire a little bit different, maybe at a lower barrel. They can sit up on a hill and fire it from a hill, possibly, because they got a lower depression on the barrel. But it's still, it just means that they can execute more options on the battlefield. But it's not saying that they won't be able to operate the tank because it's a new tank. Tanks are going to be tanks. Tank warfare is tank warfare. They're executing their plan, which is a NATO plan, which means that they're learning NATO tactics with that tank. And they're already using those tactics. So it's just a matter of them learning to get in that tank, shoot that tank, move that tank, and communicate with that tank. The supply lines, in every operation I've been on, the supply lines were there because we knew what was going to be needed. They put it in containers already packed up, ready to go, because you knew what you needed. Yeah, yes, it was all US/NATO, but again, the tanks have been used. The ones that are ready to go are sitting in Germany. They're ready to go. They've been refurbished. So it's not like they're getting junked per se. They're older, but they're not junked because they've been reworked. It's just that they need to get in them, get it to the front, start using it so that they can get their plan and work the plan. And with something that's in better quality than the Russian stuff that they've been using.
So are you going to send Germans, Finns, Spanish, Dutch? I mean, who are you going to send into Russian artillery range to do all the maintenance?
You got advisors. There's advisors on the ground from every nation in the world, I'm pretty sure. You got volunteer people that used to work on that stuff like me, they're working on stuff because they want to contribute. It's not like and the dollar speaks. You want mechanics, you pay mechanics to come. So, and all of that, and I'm pretty sure there's no shortage of mechanics that want to turn a wrench on a tank, because I can tell you, having done it, You love working on that stuff, that shit. You love it. So that shouldn't be an issue. Seriously.
Yeah, it shouldn't be and isn't though. I hope you're right. I would like to think you're right. But when you're talking about war and betting the future of your nation, you don't wish cast. You have to bake all of that stuff in organically, which means you can't just assume that it's going to be there. This is not going to be a turnkey operation, which is why I think it's going to be post-war, because you have to build that infrastructure and that training and that doctrine as close as it may be or as different as it may be from the ground up. Otherwise, you risk, one, throwing it away through improper use or improper maintenance, and two, it's expensive. It's a huge investment to modernize an entire tank fleet, especially in the middle of war. So I think that you've got some wish casting going on there, brother. I just don't see it as being feasible while the war is still high intensity.
We wish cast on the HIMARS. We wish cast on the M777. There's been wish casting on everything that we've sent them, and they've been doing damn good with it. That's just my point. I mean, that's just all I want to stress. The Ukrainians have been doing everything that they needed to do with everything that we have sent them. I mean, they are not taking anything to the field that they don't know how to use. That's just, you look at all the examples I just gave of everything that's been given to them, and they've been using it better in some cases, as CJ has said about the 777s, better than our guys have.
Yep, I don't disagree. But a tank is a little bit different than HIMARS. I'm just talking from experience, brother.
Okay, the HIMARS, it's a very technical system. They're using it, and they've been on spot on with it. I mean, we don't know until it's there. They're getting training somewhere. I guarantee you, they're getting training somewhere already. They're not sending rookies out there on the battlefield. All right. Well, Attack'ems, you want to go for it?
Sure. I just want to everybody to face that the Cold War never ended in their eyes. We are the ones that didn't pay attention to what they've been doing, and they've been trying to destroy democracy all this time. NATO was compromised the minute one of our former presidents was elected, as far as I'm concerned. And we need to stop pulling punches and call it like it is, because there's corruption everywhere in America, everywhere. But Putin has been able to compromise all these people in power, and right now we need to stand up and support Ukraine with everything, regardless of the nuclear threat that he waves. I mean, he said that he was gonna what did he say? It was gonna be like something that we've never witnessed before in history. So I think the nuclear threat has always been there, and I don't think that we should start fearing, nuclear destruction just because Ukraine is winning. I think we need to stand up and support them even more and push them out and do everything we can do to help them, because there's no compromising with the mafia. There isn't. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. I agree with that. All right, David, Chris. Oh, no, wait a minute. Jens, you were next, then David, Chris, and then Erlen again.
Yeah, just 2 comments on corruption and on Ukraine's ability to learn. I believe right now they are juggling, 5 different self-propelled howitzers. And if you listen to the Bundeswehr's YouTube channel, the high-ranking German officer that trained the Ukrainian teams were touched to tears, because as everyone who have trained Ukrainians, they are touched and impressed by their motivation and by their ability to adapt to their own doctrine. And they know that the guys they're training, they are going straight into war with these pieces. I don't know what the difference is between training and a self-propelled artillery piece and a battle tank. I imagine there's a difference, but everyone who has trained them has been impressed, and Ukraine are juggling all these different pieces, and they seem to be managing. Also, and then a comment about corruption. All the guys who are now uncovered to be corrupt, where they fleeing to? They're packing their bags and running to Russia. And Europe has not been concerned with Russian corruption for the last 2 decades, where they have married their industry, their energy needs, friends, electronics for weapons. So I don't really. I think we have right now an ongoing genocide, and that kind of trumps these legacy problems from Soviet times. I also think that one of the largest breweries, Danish Carlsberg, right? They put everything into Russia, and I assume when you put a giant industry like that in, you know what you're doing. You know Russia is thoroughly corrupt. So I kind of feel like these concerns about Ukrainian corruption, they feel a little. It feels a little like excuses to me.
All right. Thanks, Jens. Let's see, David.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I was going to, so Jens sort of covered some of what I was going to say. I was going to respond to Raver, really. So the thing is that, firstly, the excuse of, and I don't mean it in an insulting way, Raver, is that we've heard this all along, isn't it? Well, should they have this? Should they do it? We've got to give them training and all these things, and they have been used typically by Scholz and the administration is to not do the things they needed to do. If we'd have done this 6 months ago, they'd have been trained up and they would have been used. It's not a reason not to do it. And importantly, and I think this is really important, Ukraine has not failed in any one of their tasks. So why are we expecting them to fail now? They've got circa 750,000 to 1 million people who are now working within their forces, right? Ukraine is a very industrial nation, so finding people who are mechanics and the rest of it, and I appreciate they have to be trained up, but everything that you're saying just tells me they just need to do it now, right? Every day they wait is a day longer, and we don't know when this war is going to finish. Expecting it to be over doesn't make any sense. You start training, and if the war is over and they come into service afterwards, well, that's great because the war's finished. It's not a reason not to do it. In actual fact, all I see are reasons to do this immediately, because every day you wait is a day longer before they're in service. And importantly, they've not failed once, not once. So why would we expect them to fail again? And to reiterate Jens' point as well, look, we know that they've been the questions of corruption and the rest of it. We also know that corruption within Russia is systemic and endemic, right? And Ukraine has a huge Russian problem. The people who are on charges of high treason, which isn't corruption, right, are probably part of the problem. I would fully expect that after the war, that, call it maybe not the right word, but the only word I can think of, the zealotry that's probably going to come about as a result of this war to bring about a huge change to how Ukraine probably operates, especially within that that sort of Russian corruption and that holding your hand out. We can see the changes now already. So I would suggest that that's brilliant news. And again, let's not expect Ukraine to fail. Let's expect, because so far they've outperformed every single time. Let's just go, well, let's hope that they outperform again on the corruption task as well. They've been given the tools now and they have the zeal to do it. That's just my 2 points.
And David, you actually bring up a good point, because in the former system, they were working with former Putinites, etc., all across the spectrum. And that you can't rid corruption if your system is based on an old system. They had to start from the ground up. In this case, they are trying to become Western, more Western rather than more Eastern, or more Russian in this case. And so people that lived and survived under the Russian oligarch system, a lot of them did that because that was just the only thing they knew. But now that they've been given the chance to change, you had some that were not willing to change. And so therefore they succumbed to the law of the land, the new law of the land, and not the former law. So
no, exactly right. And look, America has an example they can look at. If you look at Los Angeles police force in the 1970s and 80s, right, and the changes that have happened across there, you have broken systems. The thing about changing a broken system is the will to do it. If there's no will to do it, it doesn't happen. And in the beforehand, when Yankovic was in charge and the rest of it, you had a person who was literally Putin's sock puppet, right? So he wasn't going to change that corruption, because it was the corruption that enabled them to carry on with that power phrase. They now have someone who all intents and purposes appears to be 100% honest. And here's the thing, right? Who can never really say that about a politician? And he's 100% focused on Ukraine. Let's just go, you know what? The chances are they're really going to succeed at this as well.
May I respond, Daryl?
yeah, go for it, Raven.
Yeah. So I wasn't saying I don't expect them to fail. I don't want to set them up for failure. And there's a bit of a difference there. And I do think that they need these Western tanks. I absolutely agree with you. If we'd have started the process 6 months ago, we'd have some armored brigades ready to go now. What I'm worried about now is pulling experienced tankers off the line right at the moment when they need that combat power the most. And for people who want a brief idea on the differences, imagine taking that M777. A tank crew has to do everything that M777 crew is doing, except on the move and under fire. It's a three-dimensional, high-speed environment. You're not sitting still. You're doing all of it on the move. And I'll go back to being quiet. I just wanted to respond to that. I don't expect them to fail. I don't want to set them up for it.
I do apologise. It was the bad terminology by me, Raver. Really, what I meant was that they're very smart people. They understand these things, and they'll have troops who need to be rotated out, right? You know, they're not keeping their tankers in there for 6 months at a time. They'll need to be rotated out. So that would be the ideal time to take them out and go, you know what, you're going to go and train on a different system.
Yeah, except that right now is not the time because they've got the Russians on the back foot, so they need all that combat power forward.
And I guess that's their choice to make, isn't it? That I go back to, they're smart people, right? So they'll have an understanding of how many people they've got for this, and how many people they'll have to take out. I mean, ultimately, they're asking for the leopards for a reason, right? And I suspect it's because they understand their resources really well. But I understand your points, though, right? So I just, yeah, my belief is that if they're asking for it, then it probably means that they know they can do it.
All right. All right, Chris.
Hi, Darryl. Yeah, well, actually, I think, you know, most of what I wanted to say has already been said, but I'm going to say it again. Darryl, you're right. David, you're right. Leonard, you're right. I've worked with Ukrainians for a number of years in information technology and cybersecurity. We are dealing with really smart people here. We're talking about rocket scientists and tank constructors, people that have been building tanks for years, people that have been building rockets and missiles for years, right? All this negativity about tanks is rubbish. It's Republican talking points. The corruption in Ukraine comes from the Russians and from Trump and his gang. That's where the corruption comes from. And Trump and his gang are the most corrupt people in the world. And, you know, people keep beating around the bush on this, right? We keep getting people coming up here talking about corruption.
Chris.
Trump's fault. No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah, well, can we just stop it? You know,
Chris, do me a favor. Let's leave the American politics out of it. Bad analogy. Just leave America out of it because it's a divisive thing.
I'll leave it out of it, Darryl, right? But stop saying the Ukrainians are corrupt, because it's not true. The Russians are corrupt. So I left the other bit out of it, right? But I'm sick of it. People coming up here, right, with all of these excuses about tanks, when there's 200 people in a bloody grave in Lyman, all these people come up here with their, oh, I've been in tanks for years, I know everything about tanks. They know nothing about tanks, right? As you rightly said, Darryl, there are Abrams tanks sat in Poland, bucket loads of them. And there are Leopards sat in Germany, bucket loads of them, ready to go. It's just excuses. Really sick of it.
All right, Chris. I'm gonna ask you to take a sip on that one. Good points, though. Good points. Let's go. Diaz.
Hey, folks. Just a couple things really quick. The topic's been covered pretty good, but I don't think people quite understand. And I'm looking at it from afar and being ex-military. What I see in the Ukraine is they got the best and brightest. They got people that were civilian logistics, civilian mechanics. I've seen PhDs on the front line. So when you take those people of that quality, make them highly motivated, and that's your force, that's why they're outdoing expectations of the Western military analysts every time. That's all I got to say.
Short and sweet. Short and sweet. Love it. Love it. Let's go. Wait a minute. I'm gonna defer to my man Kobe because he stepped up, and he usually don't step up unless he's got something. Kobe, what you got, man?
I think I actually requested the mic by accident, so I'm good right now. I will throw my hand up if I want to chime in. Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate that, brother.
All right, here we go. Erlen and then Jens again.
Oh, there's been said a lot of good things about the leopards. I just want to say that there is a reason why we don't see Ukrainians charging with 8 tanks in videos on Telegram, and it's because they're scared. They're they know that those things pop off.
Wait a minute, they're scared? You saying?
Yeah.
Have you seen what they're doing with Hummers?
No. Okay, I'm sorry, but I phrased myself wrong. They know that those things are not very well built. You know, they know that those things pop off, and they're using other strategies. And the Leopard Leopard 2A4, which is one more than 100 sitting in Spain, that's been discussing about the armor on that thing it's substantially better than anything they can get a hand on of ex-Soviet stuff. The cannon is a lot better, and the optics are better. Maybe they need service. I don't know, but I'm sure the Ukrainians will make it. We Norway, we donated I think 22 M109s, and it took 3 weeks until they were on the battlefield firing. And those are very well known to be difficult to maintain. So I'm sure that they can pull this off, and I don't think it will affect their combat force any substantially, because I think they're so smart, as it has been mentioned, that they won't pull off their best tank crews that has the best version of the T90s or T72s. They will rotate this in a way that will enhance their battle capacity, and I think we should trust them in that, and not having doubts and giving them too much equipment they can't handle and all this stuff. I don't believe it. I think they are so smart, and they've showed that they can use everything in a perfect way, better than we could have ever expected. So I don't see that as being a point. I'm sure that they're in better state than any of the shit they're getting from the Russians. Seriously, even if they've been sitting in a warehouse in Spain for 10 years, I don't believe it's possible to get more crappy stuff than you get from the Russians. I'm sorry about the saying that I think they're scared. I don't mean that. They don't want to lose soldiers because the armor is crap. That's what I meant. And they know how to take those things out. And I'm pretty sure they're concerned about the obvious flaws in the T series designs. If you got that there.
Yeah, point taken. I got you now. It was just the way it came across the first time. I was like, wait a minute. Oh
no, I don't.
No.
I don't mean that they're scared, because they're obviously
Yeah.
not. But they don't want to lose soldiers unnecessarily. They're scared that the thing will pop off unnecessarily, because it does.
Yeah, it just threw up it threw up my ears real quick, and I was like, wait a minute here. So
yeah, but have you seen the video?
I'm glad you cleared. You saved it. You saved it. Good save.
Have you seen the video when they're taking out a T-72 with a BMP-2, shooting at a special angle?
No, I haven't seen that one.
So they know exactly where to shoot with the BMP-2 cannon. On the side, front side, there's like a special area where they know that they can take out the T-72s. And if they know about all these flaws, I'm pretty sure they don't want to put it too much at risk. And we haven't seen these great tank maneuvers from the Ukrainians, and I think there's a reason for it. With the Leopards, we would see 8 tanks charging through the line, because they can, and they're fast. The cannon is amazing, and their optics, even from the 90s, is a lot better than anything the Russians have. So that's, free the leopards.
Let the kitties roam. Uh-oh, Michelle got her hand up. Wait a minute, guys.
Yeah, Michelle, if you raised your hand to address Erland, I can wait.
Yeah, no, it wasn't to address it. It was just we had a comment from one of our listeners who wasn't able to come up, and he just mentioned, and I might get this wrong, that the Gepards are built on Leopard 1 hulls and the PHZ 2000 on Leopard 2 hulls. So Ukraine's already able to maintain those apparently. And according to Axel, 4 countries are already training Ukrainians on them. So he or she just wanted to make that comment. So I wanted to add that in.
Okay, I raised my hand because I wanted to push back a little bit back on Chris. I think we have a unique opportunity to avoid making this into a partisan issue. The reason why I am so harsh on Scholz is because he is a social democrat like I am. And when we are talking about tanks, I think the most optical tanks, for the reasons we just talked about, is the Leopard, and there are no right-wing American MAGA whatever in the Deutsche SPD. So I just want to push back on making this into a partisan issue. I really try to. I am not the greatest fan of Boris Johnson, but what impressed me was that he went to Kyiv and looked into Zelensky's eye and shook his hand, while my pro-European social democrats in Berlin, they stalled on that for months. So I just want to push a little bit back on making this some kind of left and right thing. And I think Raver talked a bit about implementing these tanks during this counteroffensive, and that was some thoughts I have thought about myself. Clearly, Ukraine has proven themselves very capable, but I wonder if, just like we saw HIMARS being slowly bled in, if Ukraine had lost 6 HIMARS in the first week, maybe US would have been reluctant to pour more in, and maybe Ukraine are now demonstrating that they can actually go on the offense and do pretty sophisticated, or at least compared to Russia, offensive operations. So yeah, that was my point.
All right, thanks, Ian. Folks, let me say this. If you are here and if you have something to say, raise your hand. We got a full speakers panel, so if you don't have your hand raised, we may cycle you down. All right, so we're going to keep the conversation moving, but I want to make sure that we get have a place for people to come in. So if you don't have your hand raised, we may drop you back down. Or if you've had your point made, or you've said your piece, please, if you would, go ahead and drop yourself back down, if you don't mind. And I appreciate it. Thanks. Good evening, Frank Bloke. How both of you doing?
Hi. It's good to be back. I was away for a week in the countryside and getting reconnected, and I'm a little behind the news. But this question was for Jens. I wanted to know if, since that hashtag campaign Free the Leopards has been going on, has anyone said anything in the SPD, or has Scholz said anything? Has there been any answer to that campaign? Has there been any discussion in the media about it? And whoever whoever can answer that, I'd appreciate it. But I was going to ask Jens.
He's back.
I dropped down. So actually, I heard you said I want to ask you this, and while I cycled up, I missed your actual question.
So since the hashtag campaign began, Free the Leopards, and it's been getting a lot of attention, I was wondering if anyone has addressed that from any of the parties in Germany, or if there has been any discussion about it over the past couple of days. Is it getting the attention it deserves? Have you heard anything?
Well, I can be accused of many things, among others, a social democrat, but not a German. I'm from Denmark, so I'm not completely up to speed on that.
Alrighty, okay, we'll wait for a German to answer the question. Sorry about that. I didn't know that you were from Denmark. Thanks, Jens.
Go ahead, Frank.
Oh, hey, everybody. I was just wondering if there's any confirmation about that drone strike on those jets in the Kaluga region, just southwest of Moscow today. If so, that my thoughts early on was that would be, I mean, obviously a very excellent birthday gift for President Putin, but also it's closer to Moscow than it is to Ukraine. So that's pretty deep into Russian territory. Just curious if that actually was verified at all.
Sorry, Frank, I just missed that last little part. Was that about the
Well, there was an airfield
depot?
in the airfield in the Kaluga region of Russia, and I saw a couple reports that there was a drone strike that took out two jets at the airfield, and I thought that would be, or I'm not sure if it was a drone strike, but it was at the very least the two jets were attacked and destroyed at the airfield. So I wasn't sure if that was corroborated or just sort of loose chatter.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if somebody else had heard anything. I did hear about, I don't know if this is the Iloviask, which I think is a different area.
It's I'll link it in the nest. It's unconfirmed at this point in time.
Perfect.
The war zone solicited some satellite imagery from today to try and verify it, and they were not able to verify it, but they don't know for sure whether the strike took place before or after the satellite pictures were taken. But based on what we have so far, it is not confirmed. The Russians say that there was a drone attack and they shot down the drone, and none of the targets on the ground were hit. And Ukraine is claiming that they destroyed two Tu-M3 strategic bombers, but so far we do not have proof that that happened.
Thanks so much. Just curious.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Leonard, go ahead.
Thank you, Michelle. Just a quick follow-up for, I think it was Jens was discussing the how far the leopard question had gotten with our friend in Germany. I just suggest maybe we should have Axel do a German translation, because Olaf Scholz might be reading the English and it might be confusing him. So just suggesting something like, I don't know the precise, but a rough English approximation might be Freider Katzenspots or some such thing. So any proper German speaker, which I am not, any proper German speaker could put that into a proper format for us. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Leonard. So we have a few spots available. So if anybody has a question or wants to make a comment, please feel free to push the bottom left-hand button that says mic is on and click on that, and then one of us will bring you up. As well, when you get a chance, please retweet this space. So we really appreciate all of you being here and would love it if you could just share this space with your friends and family. MriyaReport is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you get the opportunity, please check out MriyaAid.org and see some of the cool things that they're doing. 100% of the proceeds go to non-lethal aid, and those include things, non-lethal aid to Ukraine, and those include things like tourniquets, night vision, and so on. So thank you so much, and I'm just going to bring Ryan up. And Erlen has a question.
Well, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but the Norwegian state-owned oil and gas company Equinor has been sending out lots of maintenance ships with mini subs, basically checking all the pipelines in the North Sea. And in Norwegian news, it's been talked about for a few hours that one of these ships, it's called Havila Subsea. If you want to check it up in the ship trackers, it has stopped after after it's been going for 8,000 kilometers, I think, or nautical miles along the sea, with the mini sub checking out one of the main pipelines from Norwegian gas fields towards Britain, I think. And there's a lot of speculation, especially because the Norwegian oil and gas authorities don't want to comment on why the ship has stopped. So in light of the explosion in the Nord Stream 1 and 2, that's at least the Norwegian authorities are doing what they should have done already before.
You say the ship stopped, as in it may have found something?
Well, that's the speculation, and the authorities don't want to comment on why the ship has stopped. So there's like lots of speculation in Norwegian media why the ship has stopped, and it's it's over one of the pipelines, and it's been like that for 5 or 6 hours.
And the plot thickens. We don't have our old guys up here tonight.
Not yet. Maybe someone will say oil, and then a few will come up. Okay, George, go ahead.
Yeah, they might be there. They do have. I don't know if Norway has them, but they do have remote undersea vehicles that actually can be in place. They kind of like go kind of around the pipeline, and then what they do is they run along the length of the pipeline, scanning it.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They have a ship with several actually mini subs going along the pipeline.
Yeah. So if it's stopped, maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they're actually in the maybe they're attempting to place this one. I forget what they're called. Anyway, one of these undersea robotic vehicles on that part of the pipeline to run it to a certain length.
I got you.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they've been over there for a few hours because they're actually dropping the the remote undersea vehicle on the pipeline at that section to run it for whatever distance. The other thing that would be helpful if we knew exactly where that is, if that's inside you said Norway, right? Norwegian territorial waters, and how close it is to international waters. Maybe that's why they want to check that part of the pipeline. I have no idea. It's just a guess on mine, but that's what it sounds like they're probably doing, is putting one of those scanning undersea
it's
vehicles.
Just without the Norwegian territorial waters, but within the Norwegian economic exclusive zone.
Yeah, so that kind of makes sense, because I think if from what I remember, that Norway has pretty good uh, acoustic monitoring in that area of their own territorial waters. So if a Russian, let's say a Russian sub or something like that, had gone into their waters, they would have known. So maybe they heard something outside, like right outside that area, and that's why that they're keying in on that area. They might have picked up something on an acoustic sonar or something like that.
Yeah, there's been lots of debate about this stuff in Norway lately. We just created a restriction scheme where Russian fishing vessels and research vessels, which unfortunately they can operate in our economic zone. I don't know why. They have to go to port in only 3 different cities and will be searched by the authorities or the whole ship every time they go to port. And they have been trawling around these pipelines last weeks, so that's probably why they're checking them out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the Norwegians are trying to be preemptive right here, so obviously, because what they don't want is a leak in their waters, right? They don't want one of their pipelines to get sabotaged. But I I really doubt if the Russians would even go that way, because remember, you're taking a gamble, right? There's a lot of things that have to go right for you to pull that off without getting caught, especially now that everybody's alerted, right? I'm sure there's like satellites up in the up in this in space. Everybody and their grandmother is looking out for somebody trying to sabotage a pipeline, and they get caught red-handed sabotaging a pipeline that belongs to a NATO country. That's a gamble I don't think they're willing to take. Besides all their remember, all the saber rattling that the Russians do is done for domestic consumption, and also for the weak links in our I guess the coalition, whatever you want to call it, right? That's what it's done for those two. It's done for those two people, those two sectors. Domestic consumption mostly, to allay their countrymen's fear that they're still strong. They're still like everybody's scared of them, right? Eye roll there, and then for the weak links or the fence sitters in the West.
Go ahead, bloke.
Yeah, I was just checking out that post that Colby put up. That's a big deal, Colby. If the Ukrainians were able to strike that deep, and they took out, like, these are strategic bombers, right? The Blinder, if I'm not mistaken, if that's the designation.
Backfire.
The Backfire. Okay, right. Yeah. So that's a big deal. So is this being reported by both Russian and Ukrainian media?
So the Russians are saying that there was a drone of some sort that was flying over the airbase, and they shot it down, and the drone was not able to hit anything on the ground. And apparently there was a picture circulating around on Telegram. I don't know that it was from an official source necessarily, but there was a picture of a down TB2 that was purported to be what they had hit. And that picture was in fact from Nagorno-Karabakh. So that's obviously Russian disinformation, but I don't think that that was necessarily from official channels. The official channels were just saying they shot something down, and whatever they shot down was not able to inflict any damage on any of their equipment or infrastructure. And Ukrainian sources, unnamed, I don't think that Ukraine has publicly stated that they did anything, which is sort of their typical MO for anytime anything happens deep in Russian territory. They don't tend to take responsibility, but Ukrainian sources, I think, reportedly in the intelligence services, said that they destroyed 2 of these Tu-22M M3 strategic bombers. So that's the Ukrainian claim. We don't have independent verification of this so far. The war zone acquired satellite pictures from today that were taken sometime in the afternoon local time, and we don't know exactly whether those pictures were before or after the strikes allegedly took place. What was visible indicated that there wasn't any damage on the ground, but part of the base was obstructed by cloud cover, so we can't say definitively that nothing was hit. But in today's pictures, we do see quite a lot of different jets out in the base, which is consistent with what we can see previously. If you just go into Google Maps, you'll see that there's lots of different jets parked at this airbase. There's a number of strategic bombers. There's a strategic bomber unit based out of here, but there's also other fighter aircraft on the tarmac that you can see. So hopefully we can get some further fresh satellite imagery and hopefully confirm what actually happened. Obviously, the Russians are not typically very truthful, but so far we can't independently verify Ukraine's claim that they destroyed 2 of these strategic bombers. But if they did, that would be hugely significant because Russia has not lost any of their strategic bombers to date, and any loss of them is a fairly significant blow because these are expensive, sophisticated systems that Russia has.
Hey, absolutely, and it also shows that, I mean, that's Bayraktar range, I guess. I haven't double checked the as the crow flies distance, but if that was done by Bayraktars, that's actually amazing, and it means that they can start taking out some of these air assets that are launching missiles, cruise missiles and stuff like that, and represent a threat, all over Ukraine. It's a big deal. Plus, they would have had to. This means that they got all the way there, not being detected. We'll just have to wait for confirmation, but I'm actually very excited about this. This is amazing. So thanks for that, Colby.
Colby, if I'm not, is that the nuclear, or one of those nuclear groups stationed at that base? Because I know the backfires were one of the platforms that they were carrying nukes on. Am I correct?
All of Russia's strategic bombers, to my knowledge, are capable of carrying missiles that are capable of carrying nuclear warheads. So that's entirely possible. Yeah, so that's one of the things they're designed for. Russia's strategic bombers are part of their triad. So there's numerous different weapon systems that they can carry, including nuclear tipped cruise missiles.
Because if I'm not mistaken, that's similar to what we used to have our B-52s. The backfires, if I'm not mistaken, were their B-52 for a long time.
That's more the
B-52 would be more analogous to older Russian aircraft. The Tu-22M backfire is probably more comparable to a B-1 Lancer, I would say.
Okay, all right, because I know the backfire. I know it's probably has many designations since the old days, but I know the backfire was the one that was prevalent, well, back in the Cold War anyway.
Well, they're all Cold War designs. Russia doesn't have any new strategic bombers that are brand new designs. They're all fairly old designs. The newest one is the 160, I think, which is probably was like an 80s design. That's the newest one that they have. They don't have anything newer than that.
Well, let's just hope if they do have them, let's hope that they're starting to have their wear problems as well, like everything else.
So it was very common for the Russians to use Tu-95s for most of their strategic stuff. Backfires were a little less common, and but the fact that Ukraine was able to get a Bayraktar all the way up to that base, which must be a heavily defended base, right? Evade all the surveillance that the Russians had and conduct a strike. If this turns out to be true, that's a very, very big deal, because that will not be an undefended base, right? And I'm just, it's definitely sending a message, in my opinion. I don't know, Colby, if you wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that, if you're in agreement or not.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the 95, as you say, that is the familiar bear. That is like Russia's B-52. All Russian strategic bombers are typically referred to as bears, but the 95 is the one that specifically has the NATO reporting name Bear, and we just kind of refer to their entire bomber force as bears often, and the BareNet, the communications network that they operate off of. So yeah, this is deep in Russian territory. So for them to penetrate that deep into Russian territory and going through Russia's air defense network and not be detected and destroyed before they got to the base, because the Russians are admitting that this drone actually did reach the base before it was shot down. So the fact that it was able to make it there undetected, and for them to not be able to destroy it with surface to air missiles before it got there, or for it to not just get picked up on radar, and they didn't even scramble jets, from what we can probably tell. Maybe, and I'm pretty sure in the pictures we can see there's MiG-31s, I think, which are interceptor attacks. So you would expect them to be scrambled anytime there's any sort of incursion into their airspace. So yeah, this is another case of what Russian air defense doing. Kind of a big mystery here that they've continued to mess this up so badly again, given the record of what has previously happened in Belgorod and other places. You would think that they'd be a little bit more alert, and it seems that there are still a lot of pretty significant gaps in their air defense network.
Yeah, that's why I hooked on to the fact that the Russians had admitted it, right? Because that's surprising in and of itself, because that's revealing a lot of cards, right? The fact that they admitted that a drone got all the way over there and was able to conduct a strike, whether or not it was successful, it already points to major gaps and severe problems with Russian air defense. And let's follow this over the next couple of days. If this is confirmed, that's just the equivalent of the Moskva, in terms of lax air defense, in my opinion. Because you should not be able to do that to a strategic bomber base. That is nutty, right? So I look forward to the confirmation.
Yeah, I'm being told that apparently Arestovich has said that there was a successful drone strike. So I guess we have a official Ukrainian claim that this has happened. If that is in fact true, somebody DM me that. So if anybody has a link for that that they want to share of Arestovich's report, that the Ukrainian government is acknowledging that they were responsible for that, that would be very interesting. And as you say, hopefully we can get some independent verification of this, because that would be a pretty significant development if this turns out to be true. And And it's certainly going to raise a lot of alarm bells in Moscow if they're losing their strategic bombers, which have so far operated with impunity.
To Ukraine with a Bayraktar drone. So if this shows anything, it shows that the Russians cannot do as much saber rattling as they think they can do. That's why I think this is like strategic. It's a big deal. Let's wait, but I can hardly wait. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time, but thanks for that, Colby. Fascinating. And I guess I'll shut up now, but I'm super excited.
You never have to keep quiet, bloke. Feel free to talk as much as you want. So before that, though, we'll go to George and then Erlen. George, are you there?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, I can't hear you though. The only way
Can
I know
anyone else?
that,
Can anyone else hear me?
you're
We can
talking.
hear you fine, George. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. I couldn't hear Michelle. Michelle went bad. Okay, so anyway, Daryl, question to you. There's a video in the nest of what looks like 4 S-300 missiles on the side of a road that have fallen off the trailer. And I'm looking at that trailer, and I forget what I think you said you used to work when you were in the Army. What was your MOS?
No, I was in the Marines. I was in amphibious
Okay.
assault, but after I got out, I worked as a contractor all over the place.
Okay.
And a lot of it had to do with moving gear.
Okay. Have you ever seen a flatbed trailer with 4 missile pods, and we can only imagine the weight, with no blocking tackle and no straps evident on that trailer whatsoever?
And that's probably why it slid off.
Exactly.
There were no straps. There was no blocking, and I don't think they're that heavy. To be honest with you, I don't think the missiles are that heavy because they are a air armament, and they're designed to be somewhat light to a certain extent. So the size of them, I wouldn't be so worried about the size, but the fact that they're on a flatbed and they weren't
with no
down
blocking,
and just sitting on the ground.
So yeah. So look, even if you're talking about 1,000 pounds, which I think they're a little bit more, obviously more than that, they just thought, oh, these things are kind of heavy, and they'll just sit on this flatbed. That whoever loaded that, that's how little they knew of their job.
They thought size matters, man. They thought size mattered.
Well, I'm surprised the damn things didn't ignite and take out like a city block, but that's another story.
And if you saw my comment on it, that's exactly what I said. I said they're lucky it didn't take out that grid square. So, yeah,
exactly. I mean, I've never seen that. Like, and just so some people that are in here that don't know, even a heavy vehicle like a M1 Abrams, we used to call what we call a heavy equipment tractor, and the big trailer, you still had to block that in, even though it was so heavy, and chain it down and strap it down, and there was chains with ratchets that you just tied it down, because any movement would that thing would eventually hop to one side, and then you'd flip the trailer.
And we're not talking 4 chains. We were talking about 16 chains in some cases, holding those things down.
And then remember the chains, and then you had I forget what those pieces were called, and you just put a bar in there and you just kept tightening them, and those things were like guitar string taut.
Those
It
chain
is shocking to me that it is shocking to me that these missiles are being transported on a civilian flatbed truck and not a dedicated trailer, because I'm pretty sure that Russia does in fact have dedicated trailers just for moving the missiles, separate from the actual TEL vehicles, which are the launchers. So the fact that they have civilian trucks moving around, a fairly sophisticated surface-to-air missile, fairly sophisticated surface-to-air missiles, and not have the dedicated vehicles, shows how bad things are getting, that they don't have those vehicles available to move the ordnance around.
They were lost
Well,
on the train.
I don't think that was. Yeah, I don't think that was in the battle space, was it? I think that was somewhere else. They were shipping them from somewhere else.
It's some sort of city, it looks like.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it was Russia or Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken. It was somewhere else. George, am I correct?
The caption on the video is "Meanwhile in Russia."
Yeah, I think it is Russia, but like I said, even if it was, it doesn't matter if it was behind, to be on a dedicated vehicle, but those dedicated vehicles might be few and far between, because God knows how many have been hit behind the lines that we haven't seen.
I would be very leery of going near any power lines with that thing because you hit a power line, they would. I think they would be liable to go off though, because if they have a contactors on them that actually remote start, that's how they start the burn process. I'd be very wary about going near any power lines.
I'm going to try and geolocate this and see if I can confirm exactly where it is. I'm seeing a report that this was in Yekaterinburg. So I'm going to see if I can figure that out and confirm that.
All right, thanks, Kobe. Let's see. I'm gonna go. Let's see. Bloke, then Erlen, and then Whiskey.
I think Erland was ahead of me, but I was going to comment on that. So Erland, if you were on a different topic, go ahead. Or would it be okay if I just commented on that? Or
go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. So what this reveals to me is that again, there is not a professional NCO corps. That would never, ever, ever, ever happen in any Western military that I know of. And the other thing it points out to me is that even if there is, like, let's say, let's suppose there's a bunch of conscripts, they're not being led. And I'm wondering where the senior NCOs are, and they've got a shortage, because that is really amateur, right? It's pretty high school, like momentum, or that's just mind-boggling. So I think it's revealing a lot that they're poorly trained and poorly led, and it just shows. And I just wanted to embellish that point that George raised.
All right, thanks a bunch. Okay, Erlen, let's try it. See what you got.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that Tchaikovka Air Base is basically halfway to Moscow, and that this should be a quite powerful communication, and it should be there should be a lot of people panicking, and I don't know what the AA officers are doing all the way from Ukraine all the way to 200 kilometers into a strategic airbase. It's mind-boggling.
Well, they lost the S-300s clearly on the side of a road somewhere.
Well, there is a report that they are struggling with AA, like there's not enough, and they've been pulling them out of fairly important strategic points like around St. Petersburg and then Kaliningrad. So yeah, there's definitely a shortage. I've read something about the American strike drones may be on the table for the Lend-Lease, and if they can do this with the Bayraktar, which has about 300-kilometer reach, and that depends also on the line of sight radio communication. Yeah, you can imagine what they could do with the high-tech American strike drones. Now I'm going to drop down and listen a little bit.
Yeah, before you go, Orlando, I just wanted to point out that, again, I think this is strategic, right? Because when the cruise missiles are usually launched, they're usually done from, bears like Tu-95s. You can actually hear them when they're up, because I forget what the frequency is, but they have a net. So if Ukraine really wanted to take out the asset that was causing a lot of cruise missile damage, that would be the target. I don't know, and Colby can probably correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how often backfires have been used. I know that they had a different use case, supposed to be the carrier killer, etc. So I'm a bit ignorant about that. But I think the point it makes is that strategically, Russia is extremely vulnerable. And that is the message they're sending. And I think that is a great message to send right now, because there's been a lot of bluster. And I think it was like a bit of a smack upside the head saying, don't do anything stupid because you're not as good as you think you are. So, I think it's amazing, big deal. Let's wait and see.
I'll reply to that. The other thing that this implicates is that Russia will need to reinforce their AA around all their strategic air force bases, which will move assets away from the battlefield in Ukraine. So
Here.
It's a great success if this actually made some damage, and if it even if it didn't.
It put
Yeah.
it put some cards on the table is what it did.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even if it didn't, the fact that the Russians are admitting that we let a drone into 200 kilometers from Moscow, that's mind-boggling in and of itself. If you would think they would keep their mouths shut about something like that, because that's a major failure, right? And you're absolutely correct. Ukraine actually doesn't even have to do anything at this point. Further, they just have to make the Russians worried. And we saw what happened in Crimea when they hit Saki Air Base, right? The Russians had to move everything elsewhere. I forget where they went. And so if this is happening, the message being sent is, it's going to cause a lot of confusion, fear, consternation, reorganization, probably a little bit of panic. And all of those things are very good for the Ukrainians.
I just want to note that it's around 100 kilometers from the airports that are on the outskirts of Moscow. So it's quite powerful. And then I'll drop down. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Erlen. Hey, goodness, is that you? Whiskey?
Hey, Daryl, what's happening?
Oh, okay. That's not, you know who I thought that was.
Yeah, I don't. The only thing I was going to comment when I saw that the S300 sitting on the side of the road was normally whenever we moved heavy precision equipment, we always did it on an air ride, truck and trailer. That way it wasn't, the equipment wasn't bounced around and the calibration of it thrown off. I can only imagine with those things laying on the ground. Granted, they didn't explode, but I imagine the calibration isn't, they're going to need to be recalibrated or rebuilt. I mean, who cares? But still, it just goes to show how amateur they've been moving some of this stuff around on civilian vehicles. And that's all I really wanted to add. Thanks.
I mean, we military build our stuff, and they can take a beating, but who's to say Russia does what we do? We overbuild stuff so that we don't have any issues, because we know that people don't act right out in the field. But that said, we don't know if Russia does the same. So what you're saying about calibrations and things of that nature may still be true.
Yeah, we had